That was awesome. I love that. Hello, welcome. The blob was radioactive fallout. That was, the blob was real. So, send in the drones. Gonna send in the drones into a nuclear meltdown. How's that work? Electronics don't work in there. They spent $50 million on an arm, you know, like a fishing rod, and it drops down a mechanical clamp and tries to grab something because electronics don't work. So now all of a sudden the drone is going to work. The drone, of course, is going to be blowing radioactive fuel particles all over it. That's really going to work, is it? Well, of course it doesn't, but that's the story they're going to tell everybody. I'll show you what I mean. It's very important. Bloom, bloom, bloom. Like a bit of pumping music, get me rocking before I go live. Thumping on the nuclear scientists. Scumbag. So you ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the building. Don't worry though, they're going to fly a drone, Dana, into the containment where the reactor is. Yeah, but you blew the reactor out of the building. Not a technicality, Dana. We're scientists. We can do shit. You can't do stuff. So that's reactor 3. That's reactor 3 to your left. Reactor 4 right alongside of it. There's so much radiation there. Electronics can't work in that environment. More people. This was the fire department. On the seaside, spraying water on reactor 3 in that shot, and this shot, and that shot. You're not going to see that stuff very often, are you? Probably won't see it at all unless you come here, actually. You know why they're doing it? Because it really blew up. And it ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools. You want to see the shittiest job in Fukushima. The absolute worst job you can get. Your boss says, I want you to go over there with this little box, and I want you to reach down right there where that little circle's toe. That's literally the worst. You can see the regions they got sprayed over everything. You see that, like a bizarre type of green. You know they hate your guts when they tell you to do that. Run away. Don't do it, man. Just don't do it. Don't take this job at a nuclear site either, walking around with a Geiger counter. You see the mud puddles? They're not mud puddles, that's reagent they spray for the fuel particulates because they're splitting atoms to try to bring down the numbers in that little area. because the fuel is there popping, splitting atoms nonstop. And of course, these Geiger counters are garbage. Like, they're not going to give you a real Geiger counter that works and send you in there because you're going to run away screaming. You realize what happened? It was a nuclear meltdown. It was a nuclear meltdown. Yeah, why don't you go over there with the Geiger counter, look, and put your finger on that spot right there. Could you do that for me, Georgie? What'd you say your last name was? You won't want the guy with the tattoos to get angry, do you? Go over there and put your finger down. Of course you die. Everybody dies. That goes over there. Scud up. Can you imagine how evil it is to tell someone to go over there and put your finger down right there? I know the building's ejected, the reactor core is right out of it, and your job is to go down and point your finger. The industry is lunatics. Got a bunch of pictures coming up. But another struggle to get this up and running again tonight, man. Is Japan lying by claiming Fukushima Reactor 3 containment exists despite the videos and pictures that proves it's gone? You're going to see both tonight and quite a few. Don't worry though, we got what is it? Barely bigger than somebody's hand. That's going to work in a nuclear meltdown when no other electronics can possibly work. Don't worry though, it was a drone developed to go into a nuclear meltdown, Dana, and look, it's supposed to go into the containment. Containment was ejected right out of the building. So this is about propaganda, right? This is about, there's 1,000 public relation firms, and their job is to keep propaganda into the, so when people are looking up Fukushima, they run across these stories, and they're like, oh, well, that's pretty interesting. Wow, they got drones that can go in the reactors, whatever that is. I can guarantee you one thing, if a drone did go in a reactor, when it came back out, that's not something anybody's ever going to do and survive. Pick it up. It's going to be, like, the electronics are not going to work in that environment. You can't harden the electronics against that gamma shines and neutron bombardments and beta rays and alphas and x-rays of the likes that's inside of that thing. It'll melt a human organ in about 4 seconds. You really think a drone is going to survive that environment? Help determine the extraction method for tons of melted fuel. It ejected the reactor core. I don't know if you noticed this, they're pinheads. It ejected the reactor core right out of the building. And don't let that stop a journalist from cutting your throat, though. Inside the number 3 reactor. Oh. They're going to go inside the number 3 reactor, which ejected the fuel pools under reactor cores, non-reactor cores, right out of the building. Way up high. I'll give you all the evidence you ever need. You can convict them in court with it. It's time to come over to the winning team and help me beat the shit out of this industry. Worker at Fukushima of Reactor 3 says the nuclear fuel is gone from the spent fuel pool. Gone, Dana. There's great skepticism that any pellets remained. Well, the fuel pool is at the top of the building. These are 19-story, 65-meter, 190-foot buildings. That's Reactor 3. So the reactor core and the fuel pools are in the upper part of the building. They're gone. And I mean, you know, like the video, we'll get to that in a little bit. And so here's the official story, though. The first batch was 2019. They took fuel out of the pool to the building to your left, where the containment and the fuel pools are. And this is what it looks like 100 feet above the stump. Anybody know how that technology works? You know, oh, there's a giggity, clickety, chummy thingy, Dana. Point at the back wall. Poor bastards that are tricked into going in there. James. First batch of Fukushima, I love it. First batch of Fukushima nuclear power plant fuel was transferred to a storage facility, which happens to be the common spent fuel pool, which doesn't exist. Nothing difficult about this story. Pity the poor soul that actually tries to get to the bottom of this without finding my stuff. Just so they got at least get them on the right track. This love it, man. It's awesome. Oh, Georgia. Let me get in the other setup. The big shot fancy one where you go ink. No, this side. No, this side. It's close. Not close enough, but... So what you're looking at there, this well, that's reactor 4 right there. Why is that pixelated out? That's reactor, or the common spent fuel pool. That's where they transferred the... Why is that all pixelated out? Tsunami ran right through. It's on the same street, the same level as the other reactors, which the tsunami ran through. Which is basically right across the street from Medusa. And behind it, you're looking at transport truck containers all stacked up because that's the back of a hill, and the tsunami ran right through the common spent fuel pool, and which means you lost that inventory, just like you ejected the reactor core right out of that building. I know, it's a little bit confusing, but it's not too bad, hopefully. So why are the reactors redacted? Why is the common spent fuel pool redacted? How can you be at the top of a building that doesn't exist? And they're going to do it one better now. They're going to send a drone into the containment of a building that doesn't even exist anymore. Into a containment that was ejected right out of the building. It's called social engineering, is what that story that we're covering is. It's social engineering. The average person can't conceive that the media, their loving slave masters, would betray them. They can't wrap their mind. Well, no, Dana, somebody would call them out. The universities would call them out, Dana. I say, yes, buddy. Shouldn't you be over visiting your loved ones instead of bothering real men? So how many... This is so confusing, I know.
My understanding is on top of what used to be...
I'm just going to turn that down because it bugs me. I made this video over 12 years ago. It can't be 12 years ago. 11 years ago, thank God. And I was like, I got them now. That's reactor 4 to your left. They're pretending they're on top of that building. And the drones are doing the same thing where they're pretending they're going to go into a building that don't exist, like the media is pretending they're in a building that doesn't exist. Because the media wouldn't lie to you, clearly. That must be true. But how can you be at the top of the building way over there, 150 feet above it, when it's invisible? Same as sending a drone into the containment at the top of the building that doesn't exist. How does that work? My head hurts. Everybody's up there. The hell with you, Danny. You're bullshit. Scammer. You scammer. And that's their argument, is I'm lying to you. Even though I always show the evidence. Right? I'm saddled with the curse of always having to produce on the drop of a hat the documentation. I have to do it. Or I'm a liar. Not allowed to do a radio show because I can't show you the evidence. So, inside the plant's number 3 reactor, they're going to fly it for 10 minutes. Designed to operate in an environment where radiation levels are too high for human activities. Kind of like these guys, right? I'll show you the video and you tell me what part of the building is left. The number 3 reactor is one of the 3 that melted down. Well, officially, as I showed you earlier, they got all the fuel out of the fuel pool at reactor 3. And if you don't go crazy when you're trying to talk about this subject, you're probably one of the luckiest people on the planet. If you know nothing about this, you should run. Just fucking run. Don't stay here, watch this for Christ's sakes. You don't want to know this stuff. This will drive you insane. I'm proof of it, actually. First batch of the fuel was taken out of the reactor. Holy shit. Well, that's outrageous. That's outrageously amazing. And you've done the same thing at reactor 4, you say? Yeah, that's right, boy. These people are geniuses. They got all the fuel out of that building there that doesn't exist. They got all the fuel out of that building that doesn't exist. You don't want to mess with these people. These people can do magic. They're magic people. They're magic. Where did I hear that before? Oh, wait, hang on. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. This is kind of a sad one. Not sad in a sad way, but sad that they got away with it. I think this is the one. I can't remember when I done this a long time ago. You probably recognize the guy there. This is Canadian media. She's an activist, she's just a kid, and so they got her there. They're interrogating her, and they're going to play a trick on her. I, in my infinite wisdom, figured it out. You had to play what he says backwards. You haven't seen this before. You're going to like this. She said you got to label GMO. And
one danger that you'd face is we would just become immune.
I'm sorry about that, my loved ones out there, you lovelies. Let's try it again.
One danger that you'd face is we would just become immune to that label.
So if you label GMO, the danger is you become immune to the label. So don't label it, and then people won't become immune to it. Because they're talking to a kid, see, on TV. That's not it. That's not the best part. That's not bad. That's not bad. That's not bad. Okay, let's do this. It's a very 17 seconds if I can shut up. Just shut up, Dana, play the fucking video.
One danger that you'd face is we would just become immune to that label. We would accept that it's everywhere.
So she says we're magic people. Imagine. We're magic people. Imagine mocking to do this shit. Something like that. I can't remember. It's a long time ago. I was a young man when I made this video. But, why would you want to label anything? Because the danger is you'll get used to the label and what? Won't buy it? That is crazy talk, Dana. We're magic people. That's what she says. When you play it backwards.
One danger that you'd face is we would just become immune to that label. We would accept that it's everywhere.
Play it then, see? Like, oh, crap. It's just the way of the world. TV's like that. That's how TV works. Can't label the GMO because you might get used to it and you won't pay attention anymore. Because you're talking to a kid, right? But when you played it backwards, I'm like, oh crap, I'm never going to play anything backwards ever again after hearing that. That just scared the shit out of me. The number 3 reactor is one of the 3 that melted down. if you ask somebody what a meltdown reactor is, they're like, what the fuck is a reactor? AP journalist feels a massive explosion at the number 3 nuclear plant from 25 miles away. So a journalist feels the massive explosion at the number 3 reactor. This explosion from 25 miles away. They felt that explosion. And so what you're looking at, you're seeing these big chunks falling back down. That's the fuel pool in the reactor cores. You know, the containment. That's the containment. And that's the uranium igniting spontaneous. It keeps expanding because, and it's not the visible cloud releases on, is the only thing you're going to be worrying about here. The reactors, wherever that stuff lands is splitting atoms. And so it just grows, but you can't really see it, right? The footage collected will be used to create a 3D model of the reactor's interior. Well, there is no interior. There's no interior. There's no building. It's leveled. And anything that was down on this last bottom floor was crushed down into the earth, into the torus. During the demonstration, 2 drones mounted on a platform were inserted into my arse through a 14-centimeter penetration hole. I was screaming. I was like, no, please. That's what the nuclear industry is doing to every one of us. I'm putting a 14-centimeter. I shouldn't even. I don't want to give you the visual of that one. So there's the stump of the ghost of Reactor 3, and all that green you've seen is the reagent they sprayed over it to try to lower the atoms, the perpetual splitting of the atoms, which you can't do anyway. So who knows how many people they sacrificed to pull that off, or to put that there, or put that. These were remote control. They're usually by teaser, mind you. An estimated 880 tons of melted nuclear fuel and structural material remains in the 3 damaged reactors at Fukushima. No, it was all ejected right out of the building. First at Reactor 1, Reactor 3. So 9 reactor cores ejected out of the buildings. Reactor 4 was kind of the same thing where you ignited the fuel pools. There's 2 fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. That was ignited. Reactor 1 was the same thing, and Reactor 2 was liquefied, the entire reactor core and the fuel pool. It burnt for days, and then it went down into the earth. And the earth split open. In multiple places, we have confirmation of steam coming out of the earth to split wide open from the explosion, hydrovolcanic explosion type, underground, and then encountered water. And so you'll dissipate, that's not the right word, you'll spread the radiation, melted fuel everywhere. And so you have melted fuel everywhere burning at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And they call it corium. To study the composition of the fuel, they extracted 0.9 gram of corium from the number 2 reactor over 2 attempts. And this is where they use like a fishing rod, a $50 million fishing rod. And you lower it down this grabber. And when it got down there, they can't see anything. They just go, And then you go, okay, pull me up. And then it takes them 2 years. They had like a half a gram each time. Now, if they had wrapped it in duct tape, they would have had ounces and ounces to work with. It was all about, look over there at Reactor 2, but don't look at Reactor 3. Don't under any sort. They put a cover over it to hide it on you. The melted reactor cores are called corium. That's the biggest byproduct of the irradiated fuel rods in the first place. And so when it melts out of control, now it's a prolific amount. It already is. It's the biggest byproduct, not cesium, not uranium, not iodines, but corium isotopes, which are just hideously. You need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, the shield. So this is nasty. And just a single atom will destroy your child or your friends or your families if you eat it or drink it or breathe it. Fuel rods at the number 2 reactor were fully exposed, so it's gone. And what I mean by that is when the rods are exposed, the zirconium cladding burns at 1800 degrees. It'll burn underwater too, by the way, so it'll just keep burning. Not that water's going to stay there, because when the fuel pellets ignite, they'll burn up around 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature, just flash off the whole pool. The reactor core doesn't need oxygen to burn. It can be underwater, which is where it is anyway. In July, originally, right, TEPCO proposed a method for large-scale debris removal from the number 3 reactor. Well, it ejected reactor core right into the building. And yes, there's debris left over, but it ain't the fuel pools or the reactor cores. They were ejected. Some of it was ejected down into the building, by the way, but the majority of it clearly was ejected into the building. Some of it fell back down on the building, and certainly fell back down around all the reactors, which meant there was nothing anybody can do at this point. You can never go near it for many, many years, and you had to go near with bulldozers, remote-controlled bulldozers, remote-controlled excavators, and try to move it in increments somewhere else. And they paved over it. They put steel plates on it with the cranes, remote-controlled cranes. Then they had the big cement trucks there. They were just pouring cement over all the ground to try to build a layer over the fuel particulates and pellets that had landed on the ground and the assemblies and inside the pressure vessel. You can't go inside the pressure vessel when it was ejected right out of the building. So the stories about social engineering, and it's despicable, and it's just not tenable. You just can't sit there and let this industry keep telling these lies and never hold them accountable. And if I don't come out here and raise a fuss about it, nobody on this planet will come out and say that that's a lie. There's not a single person on the planet. Well, we'll show you the evidence. That is insane. Even if Hollywood wrote a story about what we're doing here right now, nobody would believe it because it's just, no, the whole world will be talking about it, Dana. No. The whole world's covering it up. All the universities are aware of it. All the academics are aware of it, particularly nuclear industry, many other disciplines. All the media is aware of it. They pretend that they're on top of a building that don't exist. That lie can't work unless all the universities and all the medias say, well, we're not going to.
What I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge...
So that lie can't work unless all the media participates in the lie. If anybody comes out and challenges and say, hey, wait a second, the building looks like that. If Greenpeace come out with that 4 clips like I begged them to do, and they blocked me on every one of their sites, you know, there's so much betrayal since I've been at Fukushima. There's so much betrayal, just against me on its own levels. You couldn't make it up. You can't make it up with. And the silence, you can't make that up either. You can't imagine. You know, I was pretty naive originally. I thought for sure the media, because there was signs in the media, but now the media has taken over. The UN calls the shots when it comes to nuclear. Preparations for the operation are expected to take 12 to 15 years, with full-scale work beginning no earlier than fiscal 2037. We got, what, 12 people in the video. Bless your hearts. Curium and plutonium outside the Fukushima plant indicated a nuclear explosion at number 3. Broken spent nuclear fuel rods may have been scattered. If they're scattered, then they catch fire immediately. If they're not in water, they burn at enormous temperatures. Military units severely contaminated when reactor 3 exploded. 2 radioactive to stand by each other. 6 members. Plutonium, uranium, and reactor 3 had all been blown out. It's no ordinary explosion. The government, nuclear industry, the media was concealing the truth. This is reactor 3. The building, these were 19-story apartment buildings. Think about that. 190 foot, 65 meter buildings. So the explosion was this was a massive explosion. The reactor core is actually, no, that's not what happened. Oh, that's Goddard Journal, E. Goddard. Sorry about that. So he's saying that the top of the reactor, it blew up through the top of or around the top of the reactor. Dirty dirtbag, eh? It ejected the reactor core right out of the building and the fuel pools. Ian Goddard had made videos attacking me back in the day. Invited the media to watch the training for a drone survey. Oh, come on down, media. We need your hand again. What do you mean, what's in it for you? We already made you a lot of money. We got you on tape. An estimated 880 tons. Like, you got to realize how much each building accumulates. Around 5.5, 6 reactors every decade in the fuel pools at the top of the buildings. So these were 30 plus years old. We'll lowball it and say 30 years old. So that's 15 reactor cores. Now, it is true they shipped some to United Kingdom and some to France to make plutonium mixed oxide fuel out of it, because they want it for their weapons, they need it for their nuclear weapons, right? The nuclear plants are all about the fuel cycle. Once you take it out of the reactor, now you got bomb material. You can harvest the plutonium and that you need necessary, because almost all bombs are plutonium, right? For nuclear weapons. But, like, you can't just take it out of the reactor core and ship it to Ukraine or ship it to UK or ship it to France. It's going to be there 14, 20 years before you can put it in a container to ship it somewhere. Which meant you had at least 8 reactor cores, not 15, at the top of each of the buildings. Let's just say right on that they were doing that at that particular site. Not that we have evidence they were actually doing it at that particular site. But we do know, right, they had reprocessed quite a bit of fuel. But you can't take fresh fuel, even a decade old, and ship it there. Ship it anywhere. And that's why there's no repositories on the planet, right? So shipping it, and when you ship it to United Kingdom, you ship it to France or Donneray or wherever, to reprocess it, the releases into the environment are equal to a massive nuclear accident. This industry is disgusting. There's not a single, not even a microscopic redeeming quality to this nuclear industry. As preparation, the power company plans to survey the number 3 reactor containment vessel using small-sized drones as early as next month. But they're not going to touch it for 20 years, so why is there a big whoop-whoop about it right now? It's called social engineering. Right? They're slowly in increments over a very long time, methodically, with over 1,000 public relation firms, promote the official cover story over and over and over, year after year, decade after decade. That's how they do things all along, see? And then when it finally comes down, oh, well, yeah, I read about that years ago. Don't worry about that. It's really effective. And so one of the few problems they got is us. We're one of the rare problems the industry has never encountered an educational program that told the truth in their history. They have no concept of what to do with that. They were in panic mode and still are. They don't know how to deal with it. They call into the show and threaten me and then follow through on the threats. They're so cocky. They're so self-assured. They're so sadistic and twisted and demented. They're not harmless and innocuous or benign. They're lethal in every... It's a terrible industry. They will be remotely controlled to take videos of the floor. Oh yeah, you're gonna go into the nuclear meltdown, It's going to be remotely controlled. Wi-Fi, is it? You piece of shit, who said this? This is a public relation firm. This will keep showing up over and over and over, multiple times a year in all kinds of different countries. It gets translated in all kinds of different languages. A survey using an underwater robot revealed lumps believed to be the nuclear fuel debris on the floor and other areas inside the number 3 reactor containment vessel. Despite the fact the reactor containment vessel is at the very top of the building. The top of the building doesn't exist. And in 2012, there's your evidence that this can't be true. Right? This is not 190 feet tall. Will you agree? Will you give me that? That is not 190 feet tall. If he gives me that, then you got to admit that I might be right. If I'm right, you're in trouble. If I'm wrong, no big deal. And sadly, terrifyingly, and just regrettably, I'm not wrong. I'm not bringing you all this evidence so you can dig up the evidence yourself and prove me wrong. Whatever evidence you bring up, make sure you compare it to this before you waste my fucking time. This is not a game to me. Oh, a little bit maybe. It's a puzzle. The idea is for me to try to produce as much as I can of this material. For the policymakers and investors to dissuade them from the industry, but so that anybody that's looking at the nuclear or anything else and is directed to me, because it's going to be pretty hard to find me if you're not directed to me. You can tell by the number of people on my video, 12 people. YouTube's not promoting me, let's put it that way. You're going to wait, what? Fukushima's still a thing? But the reality of it is, I get that the average person is just incapable of appreciating it. They've been so dumbed down with Spider-Man and the Hulk and the Simpsons and SpongeBob. You hit them with SpongeBob when they're really young. Then they graduate to SpongeBob and the Simpsons. So by the time they get to university, they're literally, they feed them enough fluoride and everything else, they're literally incapable of having a real conversation. They're bookworms. They're still bookworms. They'll just read whatever the social engineering machine has given them through their whole school years and then into their universities. Just the critical thinking parts are no longer applied to children, right? So when they grow up, they have zero critical thinking skills. They're just very obedient drones. Up to 1 million sieverts per hour outside of number 1. So 3 sieverts will melt my organs. What does 1 million sieverts do, I wonder? So does anybody really think a nuclear scientist is there? We got to get James to cook up a video of a bunch of people trying to drag a nuclear scientist there to say close to the reactors, and the panic on his face with his eyes hanging out, screeching, "Please, no! No, I know I'm a nuclear scientist. I know the better. I can't go there. I'm going to die." If you try to drag a nuclear scientist there, because they're cowards, they'll claw your eyes out like a little child or something. Like they'll screech like you can't even imagine. "No, you can't take me there. I'm a nuclear scientist. It's dangerous." But then they'll go to where the workers are living, 50 miles away, and tell them that you get a bigger dose if you smoke 15 cigarettes. Not a day, but in your entire life. Or if you spend 15 minutes on a kayak, you get a bigger dose than you would at Fukushima. So that he can trick them and allay their fears with hideous lies to manipulate them and to go in there. How is that not a crime? Somebody says to your kid, "Here, eat this candy," but it's actually cyanide pills. And then they're right in front of you, and then the kid drops dead. And you told him it was candy. "Here, eat this candy." And then the police check it, and they say, "Well, that's cyanide, that's murder." And the father says, that's cyanide, that's murder. But the nuclear industry said, oh, no, wait a second. It's not illegal to poison you with radiation. So he actually used radiation as cyanide. He tricked you. Up to 1 million sieverts per hour. This is how nutty the industry is. Too hot to attempt measuring other areas. Too hot. You melt your organs. The blob don't care. The blob don't. U.S. media only mention reports about melt-through at Reactor 1, not at Reactor number 2 and 3. I don't know, melt down there. Look at that. The fuel pools are at the top of the building, Dana. Right there. They're right there, Dana, at the top of the building. The universities told me so. The media told me so. They wouldn't lie. They're scientists, Dana. The best that humanity has to offer. The chicken X will cut your throat so quick. You got to realize who these people actually are. They go to university. They're ostracized from the community because they're just little. They're just not functional. And so they end up in universities, and they get a degree. Then they'll get another degree. Then they'll get another degree. The nuclear industry is looking for them. So okay, we'll take him, give him a good job, lots of money, and his job is to just tell this lawyer that lawyer. We'll roll him out here, roll him out there, and they finally got some attention in their life. And there's nothing they won't do, because they're just so dysfunctional. They could have took 1 or 2 degrees, when they've got incredible jobs, made more money, but they're socially inept, right? They're 30 times more strontium-90 than cesium at Fukushima. Remember that one? It's actually a 100-to-1 ratio of cesium-137 is strontium-90 production. So for every cesium-137, multiply it by 100 for strontium-90. So cesium, by the way, will saturate your thyroid glands and other glands. So you're producing radioactive hormones, anthropogenic man-made radioactive hormones for the rest of your life, and worse. And then the strontium-90 will sequester in your bones. So your skeleton is producing radioactive stem cells for the rest of your life. And that's what we're seeing with all the species and all the humans on the planet currently. Oh, it'll be okay. It'll fix itself, Dana. Scientists are really smart, Dana. The media wouldn't lie. They wouldn't cover nothing up. They're a bunch of angels. 100 million becquerels per cubic centimeters. My Geiger counter says 100 million becquerels. I'm liable to leave my hand right where it's to because I'm going to be running away so fast. Now, if you took a cubic centimeter of that and try to stuff it in a nuclear scientist's mouth, it claw the eyes out of you. They wet their pants right away. They would scream for their wife to come and protect them because this was always protecting them their whole life. Or their partners. These people you'll never see a nuclear scientist where you say, yeah, that's pretty cool. You can't name me one, not one. And a couple of popular ones, so-called popular ones they got out there are just chicken eggs. They have no manly qualities about them whatsoever. Why do you think that's so? Why is it that the nuclear industry doesn't have a single person on the entire planet that people can relate to? Like, that's a good guy right there, or a good girl. They don't have it. All the people that got rolled out, you're like, that's a fucking scumbag. The minute that you dissect their narratives, you're like, that's a degenerate scumbag. And then the next question is, what kind of evil are they doing at the universities to the students? And so this has gone on unchecked for 80 years. What do you think is the ultimate result of that disaster? Oh, James is taking notes. I love it. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to hold you to that. Don't rush it, though. Take your time. I want to be able to chop that up, and every time I say it, I can play that little clip or video or whatever. That'd be hilarious. Please. I don't want to go. Oh, no, it's a nuclear meltdown. I can't go there. It's the smoke is black, murmured the Prime Minister Khan after reactor number 3 exploded. Oh, it's black, is it? Yeah, look at that. It's black, all right. You ejected the reactor core, the fuel pools, the containments, and everything out of the building, but now you got to send a drone into the containment that was ejected right out of the building. Tell me these people are not scumbags with a straight face. I dare you. Double dog dare you. Dun, 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 dun. I know what everybody's saying, Dana. You finally lost it. It's true. Japan expert. It was a nuclear explosion at the number 3. Number 3, Dana. I know. I'm Canadian. I'm allowed to say 3. I believe fuel rods. Let me retain some of my dignity, my innocence. I believe fuel rods were blown out of the spent fuel pool. Gee, I wonder what possibly make you think that. That's crazy talk. Oh, maybe he's got a point there. The fuel rods, you're talking about around 8 reactor cores. Encyclopedia Britannica came out with a story a little while back. We covered it. Man, oh man, oh man. Hard cases. Freedom of Information response shows United States knew in March the spent fuel pool number 3 was leaking. Oh, really, eh? Flooding of the pool may not be possible due to the damage. Well, let's have a look at it. Fuel pool's at the top of the building. There's no top to the building. How does that work? I wonder how are you gonna put water in a pool that doesn't exist? We're magic people. That looks pretty good to me. I don't know what the big whoop is all about. These pillars you see right there, see the cross beams up there. You can actually turn an SUV around on them. It might be a 5-point turn. That's how big that structures are. It's a massive skyscraper. Well, it was. It got a little falling structures, fuel pools, reactor cores. I mean, the big chunks up there, and same thing with reactor 1, but because Medusa reactor 3, this is reactor 3, was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor, it cooks off 200,000 degree temperatures hotter. That's why that explosion, compared to reactor 1, is so different. Now, this picture got a lot of traction. It's very old, it's very faded, it's very blurry. That's not my fault. Don't blame me. I didn't do it. They're spraying water on stored depleted uranium that caught fire. I can't get the fire to go up because it doesn't need oxygen to burn, see? But it'll ignite everything around, and that's why you've seen the particular flames the way they are. That was 1,500 pounds, they acknowledged, of DU, so-called depleted uranium. But see, it must be much higher quality of that. Maybe it was MOX fuel or something, because we know they had reclaimed a lot of plutonium, right? That they had shipped back from La Hague in France and Donneray in Sellafield, United Kingdom. And so my theory, one of my theories, is this is not depleted uranium. This is because they currently have around 46,000 pounds of plutonium somewhere. I'm assuming they lost a lot of that stuff that was shipped back. See, reactor 3, no matter how you look at it, and we've looked at it, and looked at it, and looked at it, boy, I tell you something, we also looked at it. We looked at that from just about every direction you can imagine. The heat signatures is all wonk wonk. That's reactor 3, there's nothing left there. See, reactor 2, a lot of it went deep into the earth. And so this was early on. But the original flare, so here's what you had a tsunami coming in at 400 miles per hour. But here's what atmospheric pressures can do to containment. I mean, that's incredible. These are gigantic. Now, the Hanford nuclear site had dumped 1.4 million of these into the soil and 41 miles of unlined trenches at Hanford on the Columbian River, which flows into the Pacific. But they have 177 of them buried in the ground. They want you to worry about that. They don't want you to know that there's 1.4 million of these 300,000 gallon containers were dumped into the soil during the Manhattan Project that was earth-splitting atoms. Back to Fukushima. So when a tsunami runs through your site at 400 miles per hour or so, and there's multiple tsunamis, one on top of the next one on top of the next one, this ran through the common spent fuel pool too, by the way. Raise your hand if you think you can swim from point A to point B in that nightmare you're looking at right there. Not you, you're a nuclear scientist, you don't count. First off, when you got 2 nuclear meltdowns with around 16 reactor cores burning, there's nothing, you're not going near that. You ejected fuel assemblies and fuel rods all over that area on top of that. Look at the whole thing is just a bloody nightmare. Lethal threat from Fukushima, highly radioactive water flowing into the Pacific, a threat to life. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. The west coast of Canada, United States, bore a significant brunt of hot particles. It was the entire northern North America. This model from Stanford University is 468 hours. It's based on venting. It's not based on the releases, the loss of the inventories. It's not based on a fraction or a percent of this stuff. Covers the whole planet. That's 19.5 days, 468 hours. They said the U.S. West Coast had 8 to 10 times more contamination than Japan, basically, because of the rate of fallout worked. Well, they counted 1 to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, covering the whole planet in 23 days of cesium-137. And those numbers are based on pre-Fukushima numbers. There's one of the shittiest jobs on the planet, besides the first guy I showed you. I got some more of those pictures coming up right now. Yeah, these are firefighters. These are not nuclear scientists or nuclear academics. It's a feeble attempt because everything was already gone at this point. This was meant to lull people into complacency, and these were released by TEPCO in a series of 1,900 pictures. And there was another set of 836 mystery pictures. You can find that video on my site where I go through that. Was released in 2021. Nobody else has ever done that. So whoever took these pictures probably died that day. They probably got promised $5,000 and said to themselves, they're going to get paid cash. Yeah, cash. Tomorrow morning. We'll give it to you. And tomorrow never comes for those people. Whoever took this picture would have died right away. This is incredible amount of regions sprayed. Whoever done the work there and whoever painted the picture, whoever sprayed the region. We got pictures of the people spraying that region with garden hoses. You don't live 2 days in that environment. The homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language are the targets of the nuclear industry constantly. Right? Your paper suit, you need lead shielding to even hope and dream of some kind of protections from like the neutron bombardments you talked about there, the beta rays, the alpha shine, the gamma rays, the X-rays, is unconscionable numbers. And so when he showed this, like this is in millisieverts, suggesting you're at a nuclear meltdown. You got 36 reactor cores ejected all over the site or melted down into the earth. And these are huge reactor cores compared to Chernobyl. These are pure uranium and plutonium reactor cores. So 8 millisieverts, 8 sieverts is, even that would be considered unbelievably low. And so this might have been just made off-site, this kind of stuff, and then posted at TEPCO's website. Because how can anybody in their right mind, who would take this job? And what was the point of that? So, there is speculation that this could have been faked just for photo ops. And believe you me, they've spent hundreds of billions of dollars on this cover-up already that we can account for. If this is real, now you can see a road in the background. What would be the point of doing what he's doing there? If it has to be fake, it can't be real. If it's real, he died that day. There's no logical reason. And he's pointing to tree stumps with green on it, like a green kind of goo. So most likely this was not Photoshop, but was cooked up by the industry and put up on their website for the media to download so people become sympathetic. If it's real, then they died that day, or that within a few hours of that. I'm not saying it's not real. Don't get me wrong. It could very well be real. That looks real to me. Now I can green screen that pretty quick. Just the same as I'm green screened right now. I pretend I'm there pointing at it. If that's real, then the International Atomic Energy Agency and a whole bunch of them should be arrested for doing that to humans. That's murder. So they were using grapples to grab stuff and lift it away with remote-controlled cranes. So this is hell. That's what hell looks like right there. If you have fuel assemblies, reactor cores falling all over that area, as you've seen in the explosions, right? You had emissions constantly. The steam coming out of the ground, you would have to abandon the site. So this site was, for the most part, abandoned. They alleged that there were 7,000 people there working like little busy bees at a nuclear meltdown. Really? 7,000 people working like little busy bees at a nuclear meltdown. That simply, it can't be true. There's nothing you can do. Your organs melt. Doesn't matter how stoic you are or brave you are. Your organs melt. Which means, so sad, too bad. Me no exist anymore. So James had put out a video last night, and it struck a chord with me. And I had done some work on other stuff, right? It reminded me of stuff that I forgot about. We're going to get to that in a minute. And I only imported that probably 10 minutes before the show went live because I was working on it for the last hour before I went live. So but it is shocking. I'm going to have to do, I got at least a couple days work to put together on that just subject we'll get to in a minute. So the reactors need 4,500 tons a minute. The hoses are 300 tons a day. The water's not making it to the reactor. The reactor doesn't have anything left. They brought in the world's biggest cement pump trucks, right? On these planes, and you can see the plane in the background. Now, the idea of that was to lull you into complacency because the reactors are already gone. I'll show you where they're gone coming up in a minute too, by the way. Well, first off, they blew up. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags. And we're going to talk about that in a little tiny bit. But when you look at all these different pictures of Reactor 3 where they're allegedly going to fly a drone into the containment, hopefully you come to your senses and agree with me that the containment doesn't exist, the fuel pools don't exist. Hopefully I gave you enough information that I can sway you. So James was linked to this story. U.S. stamp of approval paves the way for 2x4s, basically, and other wood material. Cedar, which is a pretty coveted wood, for construction. And the numbers we're talking about are incredible. So I was like, oh shit, I forgot all about it. I want to do a video on a bunch of stuff. Because you remember we covered a story a couple of years ago, or maybe even last year. We cover so much sometimes. There was 19 incinerators that were burning radiation for 7, 8, 9 years, all over Fukushima Prefecture. They're taking nuclear waste, high-level nuclear waste there, and burning it, and saying it was low-level. And I don't know where the hell that story is. I'll find it. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I know how to give up either, so I'll find it. But anyway, I was finding everything but. So let's go through some of that. And then the last story is from a known propagandist, a known apologist, an absolutely creepy, crazy guy from the United Kingdom. Big surprise. The nuclear industry in the United Kingdom, man, wow, they're just like, holy shit. Evil is just natural, I guess, for the nuclear industry. Radioactive ash caused Kashiwa incinerators to shut down. It's 2011, October the 4th. So this is Japan today. Authorities, this is Chiba Prefecture. This is by Tokyo. It's 20 kilometers away from Tokyo. It's basically metropolitan Tokyo, but it's not. Metropolitan Tokyo, by the way, is 36 million people. We know they had 400,000 atoms of xenon-133 and 135. 135 decays to cesium. 137, I believe. Said Tuesday that the levels of radioactive cesium found in the ash from the garbage disposal facilities can no longer be contained and stored, causing garbage incinerator plants to be temporarily shut down. Just bear with me. So, cesium. You can't just have cesium, for goodness sakes. According to the government, that's all they're going to tell you about, typically. So, up to 70,000 atoms of cesium per kilogram, which in a square meter is almost 5 million atoms per square meter, or per surface, like a 6-inch deep square meter. And one final disposal facility. This is 2011. So this stuff is hideous isotopes we're talking about. So they can store containing 8,000 atoms per kilogram. So a Becquerel is a pulse of energy at the speed of light, an explosion in every direction. Cesium pulses for 600 feet, by the way. And you can't destroy it by incinerating it. You're just going to liberate it back into the environment. So 8,000 becquerels per kilogram or more of radioactive material in temporary storage. Like, the minimum criteria for picking up the radiation, and we've covered a lot, is 100,000 atoms per kilogram. So where the hell does 8,000 come from? Well, the industry is very key on getting rid of the evidence, so they just burn it. Based on environmental ministry guidelines to forbid the dumping of contaminated ash in landfills. So one of the places they were going to do it was under the bleachers of the 2020 Olympics for like the triathlons and stuff like that, where people would be swimming, bicycle riding, and something else. Based on environmental ministry's guidelines, they don't forbid the dumping of contaminated ash in landfills, by the way. Like wherever they put it, it's going to get washed away right away anyway. They were just storing it. The wind blows it away into the ocean, which is right alongside of it. Not an accident, this stuff. Authorities plan to burn the remaining garbage at newer, more efficient plants that they hope will release lower concentrations of radioactive ash. First off, just to suggest there's any cesium is insane. I mean, insane. And so, how do you get a lower concentrations of atoms? You can't, like all atoms are the same size. You can't just say we're selectively going to contain this atom or that atom or these atoms or those atoms. It doesn't, they're all the same size. So when you burn it, you're reducing it down to 10% of what it was. So 90% of it was released into the environment. So whatever number they ended up with, multiply it by 9 to get the amount that was released directly into the environment. Hope will release a lower concentration. Close your eyes and hope. Oh, please. Oh, please. The city plans to demand financial compensation from TEPCO, which was nationalized, so taxpayers. Tochigi Prefecture waste below 8,000 becquerels to be mixed with general waste and then incinerated. They're doing the same thing with the food, by the way, except they're selling it. So they mix it with other food. That lowers the numbers down. Okay, it's safe. You go ahead and eat it. Stupid. Tochigi Prefecture. How to incinerate without further radioactive particle dispersions. Incinerator multiple screening filters are never 100% successful. Well, they're not successful at all. All the atoms are the same size. Unless you're going to contain the smoke, it's all leaving. Everything's leaving. And if you put so-called filters up there to scrub heavy particulates out, they're going to be too hot to go near. You can never change it. You can never get near it. You can't get back into the building after a few days. Because there's zero possibility it's going to be as low as 8,000 atoms per kilogram. There's zero possibilities. On April the 22nd, because we know what Tokyo was, on April 22nd, farmers in 6 cities began removing designated waste. What are farmers doing in the nuclear wasteland? That's a question that you probably don't want to ask. And containing radioactive material generated by the accident. Well, look, I got pictures of that. As luck would unfortunately have it. I say that with the utmost respect. You'll see. Everybody sees. The farmers are getting tired of looking at the bags. That's what this story is about. And we know they're selling it for food because they're not dressed in the stupid paper suits. It'll be temporarily consolidated at a waste treatment facility. There's no such thing as a waste treatment facility for nuclear waste. It's been decided that each of the 6 cities and towns will tentatively consolidate the waste to reduce the burden on the farmers. Oh, poor farmers! They don't want to poison you, but they're going to make a living. Yeah, they're going to poison millions of people with their product. They're going to make a living too, Dana. Oh, okay. I get it. I get it. I'm not saying nothing. What a strange job to have, right? Yeah, well, I don't want to poison Timmy and Sally and all the kids and all the people and Grandpa and everybody else. I got to make a fucking living. I got bills to pay. How come there's not snipers whacking these fuckers? I don't know. The waste will be temporarily consolidated. To reduce the burden on the farmers, the elderly got to eat the fucking rice so the children don't accidentally eat it. Well, how about not growing food in nuclear wasteland? Has that ever occurred to anybody in the nuclear industry? They're like, what? That's insanity. You can't say shit like that, Dana. Censor him. He's on YouTube. We don't want to see anything from that crazy man. Don't give him more than 12 viewers. No, this industry is not insane. It's not fucking retarded at all. To reduce the burden on the farmers, the elderly must eat the rice. You think I'm kidding? Guess again. Let me bring it up. Just a headline. I got to do the whole story. 'Cause as revolting as it is, and that I probably should do it. Why is this industry so friggin' evil? It's, no matter how you look at it, this is the strangest headline. David, no, you photoshopped it, that can't be real. Nobody's that evil. It's just mad, boy. Hang on, don't cheat and read anything yet. Fukushima Children, there's 34,000 children are going to get living near the nuclear meltdown. Oh, I'm sorry, the tsunami damage plan, Dina. Yeah, you know, the nuclear meltdown. No! They're going to get radiation meters they can't read, get sent to the students in the universities that'll study them like lab rats. Dana, smarten up. Fukushima rice exports to resume 2014. Woo, it's on, baby. Seniors are urged to eat the Fukushima rice to help the farmers and protect the young children. That's the Japan Times. A Tokyo senior is waging an individual effort to get the elderly people to eat the radioactive waste so that the local farmers who are struggling with rumors and their crops are radioactive, and to make sure the grain isn't consumed by the children because the rice is radioactive. But don't worry, because the local farmers are struggling with rumors. But it's better if the elderly eat it, that way the children don't get radioactive. See, how does that lie like that actually work? Imagine reading that, sitting in your living room in Japan, and a Tokyo senior is waging an individual effort to get the elderly to eat the radioactive rice to protect the children. And we need to do it because the local farmers are struggling with rumors their crops are radioactive. And we don't want the children to eat it because it's radioactive. Welcome to stupid fucking land. I mean, nuclear industry stories. Let's go back to that story. To reduce the burden on the farmers who are growing food right in the nuclear wasteland, where they can't live there, you can't stay there overnight. They're growing food, though. They got to revitalize the fucking place, Dana. And you're saying, well, what are you swearing so much? Well, how can you not? How do you have that conversation without feeling like you're having a nervous breakdown? 53 farmers. I'll just say one farmer took about 1.5 tons, which is one and a half of these bags. But he's very stoic. He's back there working. He's gonna make, because the elderly got to eat it, or everybody else must, and we got to ship it to Canada and everywhere else. Canada had no restrictions. 55 countries banned the food because they're mentally ill down there. Except for Canada. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days. So the most radioactive stuff was shipped to Canada. And now literally everybody in Canada is sick, has autoimmune triggers, diseases, illnesses, autoimmune deficiencies, injuries. According to the madness of the environment, the removal of the radioactive material from all the farms in the city is expected to be completed by next December. So don't worry, the farmers will be back in business next December. Thank you. Die again. About 20% of the waste with a radioactive content of 8,000 atoms per kilogram. That's their magic number, by the way, which is 500,000 atoms per square meter. These are insane numbers. The waste below 8,000 becquerels will be mixed with general waste, incinerated, and will liberate the radiation back into the environment. That way, you're more likely that your children and your loved ones and the pets and the birds and mammals and animals and people around the world can breathe it in. You can't harm people if you leave it in the bag. You got to incinerate it and liberate it back into the environment. called logic if you're insane. The radioactive ash does not directly cause the incinerators to shut down, says AI. Rather, the high radioactivity of the ash itself, which concentrates from the incoming waste stream, increases the dose rates for system operators and necessitates. There was 3 incinerating employees in Tokyo one day had heart attacks, young people, because there's so much radiation in the local garbage, right? Japan's planning burning of the radioactive waste, December 2011. We need your help. This was Osaka. They're going to ship the waste to Osaka. And after burning, it becomes 33 times higher concentrations. Will be released into the air from the chimneys of the incinerators. Osaka, of course, is a massive, the second biggest city in Japan, and perhaps 2 other countries like Korea. The government is going to send radioactive earthquake waste to cities all over Japan to be burned in incinerators. Now, we covered that. That's 100% true. Tokyo has already started burning the waste. And some of the citizens have carried out and found high levels on their own with their own Geiger counters, which were the cheap, disgusting, despicable safe casts. How safe casts was allowed to exist, which is now on the stock market, and are selling shit air filters worldwide. These areas already report of health effects, including headaches, bleeding noses, and other symptoms that are attributable to radioactive incineration. The city of Osaka is currently deciding whether to accept radioactive waste for burning. Of course they did. The mayor of Osaka said that if the burning goes ahead, the ash will be mixed in the concrete, cement, and dumped into the ocean. Of course, that's the nuclear industry's favorite routine. And they're going to use that to reclaim land to expand the country. This will create a risk of ongoing radioactive contamination of the ocean. It's not a risk, it's a catastrophic. Like, it's absurd to even suggest you should do something like that. But if you say, what's the worst thing the industry can do? That's the route they'll always take. They're insane. They've never been held accountable. And so now the current generation are literally incapable of any decency or moral attributes whatsoever. They're so disconnected from anything remotely sensible. Well, I got this song on my head now a couple days straight. Loving it too. Highly contaminated radioactive waste is burning in Samengawa. And they're burning it everywhere, all over the country, folks. And a lot of it comes right to Canada, the United States. Highly contaminated radioactive waste. They're trying to bring another contamination plant all over the world. Well, the Japan's winds, the atoms are so small, you don't need the jet streams to cover the whole planet on top of that. And anthropogenic man-made radiation is the only emitter that can contaminate the entire planet. Like it's an invisible snowstorm of radioactive fallout. We're living in that now way more than we have ever in history, or in combined in history. You have 1,000 fuel pools that are splitting atoms into the environment worldwide. That's literally the worst statement you can make. That's the most monstrous, insane statement. But you tell it to somebody, most people have no concept. Can't possibly visualize it. And I get that. It's not their fault. They grew up on SpongeBob, and then they graduated to Spider-Man and the Hulk and the Simpsons. So this is a plume after 23 days from France of 10 million atoms of cesium-137. Like it's an invisible snowstorm that's covering your whole planet. Think of it. The snow never melts. It never goes away. Now call it radiation. And then you wonder why you're not seeing flocks of birds anymore. Where's all the insects and birds and mammals and animals? Why are all the whales emaciated? How come all your loved ones are dying of heart and liver and lung and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline and Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes exploded post-Fukushima. Why are all these attributes post-Fukushima all of a sudden? It is the world's first demonstration incinerator with unproven technology, and even the Ministry of Environment admitted the technology is still in the experimental stage. But the Ministry of the Environment, Hitachi, would not stop the experimental incineration of radioactive waste. They built 19 incinerators all over Fukushima Prefecture, not counting the other areas, not counting grinding it up and taking it across the country to all the incinerators. And they couldn't figure out how to decontaminate or decommission the 19 incinerators in Fukushima Prefecture they built just to burn nuclear waste. Like, it's the worst thing you can do because you can't damage nuclear waste by burning it. You can just liberate it into the environment. I know it's a bummer. Blame James. If he didn't produce that video last night, I would have thought about it. Don't blame me. Blame James. I'm just kidding you. Don't do that. There's no way. Blame me. I don't mind it. I'm used to it. Shit on fucking Dana. That's the way to go, man. You want friends, you gotta do shit on me. Come here. You're full of shit, Dana. You get all kinds of friends on YouTube. You have all kinds of subscribers. No time at all. There's no. You think I'm kidding? Give it a try. There's no way to stop right now. Don't do that either. That's a bad idea. Everybody's shitting on me enough already for all these years. I'm immune to it. It's not cool. It's not nice. And it's worse than shitting on me, trust me. There's no way to stop radioactive cesium emitted from the smokestacks. Gets into the atmosphere, travels around the globe. The locations of the incinerators amidst the pasture land, the farms rich in groundwater and forestry. People are still living here. Children are still living here. Cattle are still living here. At the same time, people are still dying. Children are dying, and the cattle are dying and having cancers. How can we tolerate the second contamination by our own government? How can we believe the project of the degenerate International Atomic Energy Agency and nuclear power plant manufacturers? Well, you can't, stupid. Japan to burn drums of unprocessed radioactive waste from a nuclear accident. That's Kyoto News. That's huge media. Like, they're insane. Like, this is insanity to even suggest you should do or could do it. And nuclear energy, like, everybody in favor, aye? Okay, motion passed. How Japan wound up stuck with tons of Fukushima radioactive soil. It's got all these abandoned communities and banks and schools and universities and malls and car dealerships and liquor stores and everything else. Nope, nothing got out. Well, there's a little bit of tritium, Danny. We got that under control. Dozens of former fields filled with rice paddies. Dozens and hundreds of hectares of forest around and now disabled. Does anybody ever show them a picture of the reactors? I heard disabled, I want to kick somebody in the nuclear industry. Have been turned into giant radioactive landfills. The municipality of Kuma and Futaba, which are joined on both north and south of the reactors. Some areas are still off limit to the public. Really? If it was off limit to the public, then who exactly is going in there? Oh, that's right, the public, the homeless and the destitute, dressed up in paper suits. Yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, go talk to Dr. Robert. The ghoul. Let's play a little clip of the ghoul. I gotta throw it out a little bit. Dr. Robert, the monster is real. Robert Gale. He's an MD, PhD. Imperial College of London with Dr. Geraldine Thomas. Now I got the video kind of edited a little bit. He's talking to the Fukushima workers, the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society. Now what he does for a living is he chops people up and irradiates them and then tries to stick another limb or leg or pig's heart or something into him. And never succeeded. But he's a sick and twisted and demented and sadistic example of a scary chicken neck. Take it away, chicken neck.
And then the final slide will just show you.
Oops. People are screaming at me all over the world. You bastard. I got no excuses either. I should have known better.
We're on that thermometer.
Let me start that again. Everybody's in shock right now. I couldn't get the button quick enough. You know how that works? Then you don't get it at all to stop the video. My apologies. So he's talking to the employees. He explains to them it's completely safe at the nuclear meltdowns. And in the latter part of this short video, he explains what he does for a living. This is a scary monster, Dr. Robert Gale. Try it again.
And then the final slide will just show you, where on that thermometer does something like Fukushima lie. Now, you'll hear a lot of detailed scientific discussions of our uncertainties, that we shouldn't really be talking about point estimates. We should be talking about ranges. But I think what people want to know, what the public want to know, what I have to deal with, and when I'm in Tokyo, and people ask me, or the workers ask me, what is my risk from getting 50 millisieverts? They want to know really where. I'm sorry, if you can go back. Where am I on that thermometer? They don't care if it's 2 in 10,000 or 4 in 10,000, which is a huge scientific difference. But just where am I on that calendar, on that thermometer? And I think these kinds of expressions, give a better sense to the public, and that's certainly an area where we can improve. And I guess the final slide, I'm sorry, it wasn't the final slide, is just looking at comparable risks of death is another way of trying to express these things to the public. So getting 1 millisievert of radiation, which is just on the bottom, is equivalent to just smoking just 14 cigarettes, period. Not 14 cigarettes a day, but smoking 14 cigarettes. And you can see some other amusing things like eating 25 cups of peanut butter. Peanut butter has a risk of containing aflatoxin, which is can cause your death or can cause liver cancer. Driving 600 kilometers. So that really helps people quite a bit in understanding where they should place the risk of Fukushima. So I'll stop there and return it to you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Gale. I'm a visiting professor of hematology at the Imperial College in London. And I'm an MD PhD, and I treat people with cancer. And so my background in entering this is really fundamentally in giving, I'm involved very much in transplants, bone marrow transplants. Because you may know that we use extraordinarily high doses of radiation to prepare people for transplants, and that very much simulates the situation that could occur or did occur in Chernobyl and other radiation accidents. So my colleagues and I are the people who actually have hands-on experience treating high-dose radiation victims. And lifetime cancer risk, for example, I said that for a Japanese or American male at the age of 50, it's about 1 in 2, 50% is your lifetime cancer risk, which is somewhat discouraging. I think several people have said to me in hearing that if I have to get cancer, I hope I get a good one. I hope I get prostate cancer and not lung cancer. But you can make that worse by being a smoker, as you can see from that thermometer. But there are some other things. What do we consider negligible? Where does a CT, probably fit in?
Like you got to be a monster of enormous proportions to say those things that he just said. That's like equal to 15 minutes in a kayak at a nuclear meltdown, is it? Really? On a recent day, countless dump trucks came to drop off contaminated soil. An army of construction vehicles, excavators, bulldozers, rollers, compressed the radioactive soil in successive layers, building an artificial hill 15 meters high, sort of layered cake. So remember they picked up 30 million one-ton bags and they made 16 million disappear? That's the equivalent of more than 5 pyramids of Giza. Started to look into managing the contaminated soil. Authorities deployed a plan to clean contaminated surfaces in about 50 municipalities. A ballad of dump trucks. How you put the word ballad into a nuclear wasteland equation is insane. Including those evacuated after the accident, those that received considerable radioactive fallout. So there was 50 municipalities where they've done their so-called decontamination. And the guy who's talking, we've covered way too many times. He's a terrible example of an apologist. He's not even a subhuman. They weren't really like any other solutions. Was that, or abandoning the area, like at Chernobyl. So they didn't want to abandon Fukushima, so he said, well, we'll pretend we clean it up, and when people are sick and tired, and we'll trick them into coming there. Oliver Everard is a research director at the Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission, which was created by the IAEA and the nuclear industry and the Japanese government at Fukushima University. They were given visiting IAEA useful idiots, professorships. They didn't have to say they were from Fukushima University. They were they would be introduced as professors, right? And then they would tell you propaganda. This is that kind of propaganda. Throughout the region, an army of bulldozers operated by 70,000 cleaners. 70,000 cleaners, homeless and destitute and victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language. Let me bring up some pictures of that stuff, by the way, because that's fun. That's kind of fun stuff, right? Let me see if I can find the best ones. There's a folder that I got there, if I can. Just hang with me now, because I literally get the phone book when I type something in. We'll get there. We're almost there. And the problem is I can't remember the name of the folder I'm looking for. So all I can remember is bags. So if I put in just bags, I got to go through an endless amount of folders. There we go. We're lucky. Luck would have it. So, for instance, this is rice farms, right? This is how they clean it up. Rice fields. Ain't you reassured? So they have like, well, if you fill up a few hundred bags there, we'll say it's clean. That's such a crazy picture. But hang on, the one I wanted was paper suit stuff. These people are insane. They're cleaning up Fukushima right there in Okuma, one or the other. Let me see. Uh, 30 million one-ton bags. That's close enough. How many bags you got to fill up? Oh, I got 30. Okay, let's next town. Wait a minute, we'll get to the good stuff. It's a slow process. I got some good stuff here. It cracks me up though. So you're cleaning up nuclear waste and you're just putting it in wheelbarrows and putting it into a bag. The big thing is you get it in the bag. As long as the bag's got something in it, they're insane. 30 million. The numbers are climbing all the time. But I mean, people are complacent, right? They're down there surfing. They're getting a picture taken right alongside of 1-ton bags, thousands of 1-ton bags of radiation. And they can't comprehend that that's stupid. That doesn't compute for some reason. I don't understand. Here's another cleaning up in the communities. Does that, like going around power washing radiation, and they got these little 600 micron mask on their faces. And so they got airborne radiation is 1,000 times more than when they started. And no, that's decontamination, Dave. That's what they call decontamination. So these people know nothing about radiation. If you ask a nuclear scientist, if you drove up there and you said, get out of the car and go over and take that hose, I'm not going to say punch you because nuclear scientists are incapable of fighting like a person. They would scream and cry probably, right? No, come on, man, please. Yeah, and then get up on the roof and wash that. Okay, that house is clean. Yeah, it's clean. Same time tomorrow morning. Yeah. They were paying them equivalent of $11 US a day. Does that sound like nuclear scientists or nuclear academics? When I say academic, I mean nuclear academics. Here's one of my favorite ones here. So they're hiding a guy who doesn't want to have his picture taken because he's a Fukushima 50 guy. So whoever these are homeless, I would imagine. Their job is to hold a tarp up so the media can't get a picture of the guy because he deserves to have his privacy, right? He doesn't want to be interviewed. He wants to be left alone. So the question is, if he looks like these guys, why would you use a tarp? Because how would you know who's who? There are a bunch of people in white suits. Are you going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, the guy with the big mustache? No, you can't see anything. So what was the point of that? The media never ever asked to talk to the Fukushima 50 again because they had to respect their privacies, and there was the proof of it. They didn't want to be hit. They had to go to the extremes to hide their comrade. Oh, this is here they're learning, right? This is how they learn to do their jobs before they go out to the communities to clean up. Yeah, you got to take the hose, and you got to pull that trigger. This is pretty technical. You got to hang out with both hands. When you can master that, we're going to let you go out there and try for a couple of days and see if the boss likes you. And if not, then it's out in the woods with you, with the bucket, so you can fill up the bags. I got 30 million of them to fill up. They got a $48 billion budget. Times are good. Bear with me. They put 3,000 Geiger counters, great big Geiger counters, in the communities. Now they built these little rented. These are temporary, right? They gave them free rent in these little box houses that are up on bricks or. And they put 3,000. That's a Geiger counter in microsieverts. It should be in counts per minute, not microsieverts. That's the joke. Not everybody's going to get it. Don't worry about it. And they have vending machines that sing, "Don't give up on Fukushima," whenever you put money into it to get a Pepsi or a pack of smokes or something. Don't give up on Fukushima. Some cheery weirdo recorded that. And then probably got a job in the Prime Minister's office shining shoes later. Yeah, I'm not saying. You gotta do what you gotta do, dude. Here's a job you probably don't want. Gotta keep everybody from going up in the elevators. Yeah, $50 a day. $50. No taxes. If not, then it's up on the roof with Joe. That's decontamination. Decontaminated. Nothing. You're just going to spread radiation everywhere. And the ground is wherever the radiation lands, even though you might pick it up, which is impossible, the radiation doesn't go away. You radiated whatever you landed on. This is the definition of madness. Everything I'm showing you here is... I'm going to get a couple. Instead of just doing one at a time like a weirdo. We want more. La, 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 la. It's important, though, that you see how the experts, the experts that we all look up to, have our best interest at heart. And you can appreciate how effective you are. And give you confidence, right? Give you that fake confidence. These people are insane, eh? Hang on, some great pictures coming your way. This will be the last batch, so I'm just going to grab a whole bunch at one time. I can't wrap my mind around this stuff, personally. Why so evil? But that's what it is. These pictures I'm going to show you is just unbelievable. Almost there. I got 3 more to get through. And the last one. All right, here we go. Let's get through these pictures. Oh, you like this stuff? So they had tens of thousands of people scraping up 5 centimeters of topsoil. That's what it looks like. Put it in a 1-ton bag, shut up, go take your $11.50 paycheck. Because these are homeless and destitute, so they'll extract their accommodations that night, each night, and the food they eat and the cigarettes or whatever. The gambling debts they accumulated. And they're basically left with $11 a day. They pick up 30 million 1-ton bags. You're farming the field and you're growing food, and then you're saying, well, we're checking it, so therefore it's safe. It doesn't work that way. By the way, even if they were checking it, they're only checking for CC-137, which is absurd. As long as you're filling up 1-ton bags, life is good. We can say, we cleaned up that area. We can't say it's clean, but we can say we so-called cleaned that area. To put 3,000 of these Geiger counters in Fukushima, they're in millisieverts instead of counts per minute for starters, and they're not reflecting the actual real numbers because the bags are 100,000 atoms per kilogram. And so the idea is to keep the people there, and that's what you see happening. Picking up those bags is meant so people can move back into those homes. Oh, no, it's safe. We sprayed the roof. I showed you the picture. We sprayed the water. It's safe. And, you can't go to the supermarket. That's off limit. But don't worry about that. We're going to we'll build a new shop for you so it's nice and safe and you can get your food there. So therefore it's safe. That's what they've done. They got an army of people with Geiger counters to check these people with Geiger counters that don't work, who don't know what they're doing. If they knew what they're doing, they wouldn't be there in the paper suit, I can tell you that much. You picked up 30 million 1-ton bags. You built these houses and forced people to stay there so that eventually you can pull it out from underneath them, and then you have to go back to the nuclear wasteland to prop up the nuclear industry. All of these are emblematic of madness and a scumbag, degenerate industry, a predatory industry. 3,000 of these Geiger counters to keep the kids and the victims there. You got an army of people who know nothing about radiation filling up bags in a nuclear wasteland. You got tons of people dropping dead from the exposures. Filling up the bags, Lord, filling up the bags. Da, 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 filling up the bags. You got to plume cover the whole planet. We should be filling up bags around the entire planet. It's still not going to work. 70,000 cleaners scrape the surface of fields, alleys, soccer fields, and school yards around houses. I just showed you all that stuff, right? Pictures. Around the houses, the work was done with shovels. So ludicrous. But there it is, right? Don't give up on the story yet. This is the last story. We still got a ways to go. They didn't touch the forest, which covers 75% of the affected area, Everett notes. Too complicated, so fuck it. There's actually 105,000 dumps. This story is written in 2023, by the way. Let me bring that up for you right quick, because why not? I just want you to see the discrepancy between what they say and what we know is reality. That is unequivocally, we have the documentation. Because I'm a sucker for friggin' punishment. Okay, so playing past the parcel with Fukushima, 30 million tons of radioactive waste in 2016. They didn't stop in 2016, by the way. And not everything is gone in the bags. The bags deteriorated after 3 years. So the number 30 million one-ton bags is what they're actually talking about. In 2019, in 2016 was 150,000 sites. In 2019, they consolidated to 105,000 sites, not 1,200, like that other story I just tried to tell you. It was actually 105,000 sites. You can go read the story yourself. And bags are not square, they're round. So that's, even though they talk about green sheets and they show you that, that's simply not what we're talking about. The 105,000 sites are like this and like that. Not that. A more sustainable solution was needed. Like power washing a house in a street is not a decontamination at all. It's got nothing to do with the word decontamination. It's got everything to do with the word cover up, and we don't care how many people get sick and die. I got a big 600 LED light underneath. Try to shine up and get rid of the shadows. So you get only the best quality. Yeah, all for you, just for you. They accepted in exchange for a promise these mountains of contaminated soil must disappear from Fukushima within 30 years. If they took the waste in their town temporarily, in Akuma and Fukushima and places like that. The town wants to regain their inhabitants, their fields, and their life before the disaster. The state agreed and set the date in the law passed in November 2014. Radioactive ash. Despite the cold and the snow in mid-February, trucks waiting in front of a conveyor belt to deposit bags retrieved from one of the temporary storage sites using a mechanical arm. At the height of the activity, we have 3,000 trucks a day shuttling back and forth to move the waste, the 30 million one-ton bags, which 3,000 trucks a day. And each truck can take 7 bags, 14,000 pounds. That's the official story. So 3,000 trucks is a lot of trucks. Just hang on for 1 second. there. Yeah, here we go. In the factories, conveyor belts carry the bags to grinders that tear them open. So these are one-ton bags that get torn open by what's called a grinder, and into a series of enormous rotary sheaves that sort the waste. Like heavy stuff will sink, for instance. Recovered by other trucks, the soil will be buried for decades near the plant. So what happens when it rains? Stones, which are very lightly contaminated, are used for construction work. Lightly contaminated compared to what? Fuel rods? Plants in the black bags are burned in the incinerator, so you liberate all that radiation, a catastrophic amount. Their ashes, which include concentrated radioactive elements, are also stored on site in a dedicated building. So why would you store radiation concentrates inside? Because now you can't get back in the building. And if you do, then you're severely poisoned. Half the town's territory is now habitable. The other is a nuclear wasteland. See, a nuclear wasteland is not inert. The radiation is easily liberated and is always airborne in that environment. The whole community, you're right alongside of ongoing nuclear meltdowns. But the inhabitants are still missing. The 11,500 before, today there are 936 employees at the plants, dismantling projects, municipal offices, and 172 former residents. Most elderly people wanted to return home, or people living in new, affordable rental housings built by the government. Affordable rental housings built by the government to encourage people to return. The scariest thing any words can be said is, "Hi, we're from the government, we're here to help." That's the scariest thing you'll ever hear. New affordable rental housing built by the government to encourage people to return. Yeah, come on back, I'm going to give you $20,000 a year. Free Plingo games twice a week. Subsidies are flowing abundantly. They're throwing money at them. City Hall, and we covered a lot of it over the years, obviously. City Hall has begun to build a huge school in the hopes of tracking 25 children. Like, they built a $4 million school, right? Made it beautiful, all the amenities. So the parents would come there and hang out all day too. If you can get the kids in there, then statistically you can say it's populated. Yeah, they get sick and die, but don't need to mention that stuff, see? A community center, retirement home, even a beautiful public bath has been inaugurated. Yeah, really. We actually know one of the pool boys, one of the towel boys at the bathhouse. Yoshida Machado, wasn't it? That's the tsunami coming in. Soil contaminated 8,000 becquerels per kilogram can be used for construction sites as fill for agricultural projects. There's several studies for non-food crops. That was interesting because they never stopped growing food in nuclear wasteland and shipping it worldwide. Just Fukushima Prefecture is 1 billion pounds a year of rice, not counting all the other stuff. The 14 prefectures that were banned by 55 countries for a decade had all grown to close to 1 billion pounds of rice each, and they're shipping that worldwide, even for agricultural projects, which is 500,000 atoms per square meter of topsoil. And multiply by 66.6 to get square meter. I've done it actually for you coming up. 532,000 atoms of... Now they're only acknowledged in cesium-137. How is it all the other isotopes can't exist when it comes to nuclear accidents, I wonder? Only cesium-137. The Ministry of Environment is currently testing the planting of rice on the contaminated soil. And he said, and we covered this a lot, the transfer of the cesium to the edible parts of the rice is very low. Of course it's not. It's ludicrous to suggest it could be. You don't need to test it. They've been growing food alongside in nuclear wastelands for as long as we can remember, for 80 years. There's an absurd amount of studies out there that the radiation is sucked up into the food. Not to the best part yet. I almost don't. I'm rushing. I haven't stopped for a long time today. I made it this far. Let's keep her going here. Yeah. Well, everything will be different for me the weekend. Things change for the weekend. When we come back on Sunday, things are going to be different from poor Dana. Because it's my birthday. I'll cry if I want to. I hate birthdays. Another sad year older. That means I'm 63. Shouldn't tell that nuclear industry is like, trying to get rid of them. Call it natural causes. So here's some of the studies that disprove what that scumbag was saying. Let me go backwards for 1 second. So foliage and soil uptake of cesium and strontium by grapevines. Oh. And strawberries. Oh, they happen to know that the fruit sucks up the radiation. Accumulation of radionuclides by plants is a monitoring system. Foliage and root uptake of cesium, strontium, zirconium in tomato plants. They've studied everything. There's nothing on the planet they haven't studied for radiation contamination, because we contaminated everything. Cesium-134, cesium in potatoes, French fries, potato chips. The influence of the development of temperate fruit tree species and the potential for their uptake of radionuclides. They don't need to do experiments in Japan. They already know it sucks up food. They want to show you their studies, not these studies. 134 strontium, cesium, 85 nasty isotope, man. There's a lot of it. Like we're talking comparable to the iodine 129 numbers. Translocation of 125 iodine, 75 is wheat edible parts. Vertical soil transfer by a tree root system. They understand every facet of it. None of these studies says that it's harmless or innocuous or benign. The government dreams of redistributing 3/4 of its mountain of waste. When the government started contracting other prefectures in 2021 to test the idea of having them reuse the soil, nobody agreed. Fukushima nuclear disaster, a failed decontamination process. We might as well finish this out. A better option could be to declare the zone a natural reserve with nothing in it. It's a nuclear wasteland. It's not like other contaminated areas, it's a nuclear wasteland. The species don't recover. Right? Chernobyl is just a wonderful wildlife, Dana. Yeah, a migratory mass of animals like wolves chasing bears, chasing elk. Right? They don't talk about frogs, they don't talk about insects, they don't talk about small birds. They don't talk about the biota and the soil or anything like that. Stood on steel plates in paper suits at a nuclear wasteland. Well, that's not a nuclear scientist. The Chernobyl, to a lesser extent Fukushima, contaminated large areas of land. So they're saying Chernobyl did, but Fukushima didn't, right? That's the takeaway from that. With low-level radioactivity. The whole country was buried. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't just the whole country was buried. The whole planet was buried in less than 23 days. And there's all kinds of... This was a spike of 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137. But Fukushima's low level. Yeah, Canada, United States, brutal, damn it. Fukushima's not very much. They only picked up 30 million one-ton bags and 3% of the land. That can't be too bad. Following Fukushima, 1,100 square kilometers were evacuated, resulting in the relocation of more than 100,000 people. Well, I mean, there's vast tracts, vast communities with absurd radiation They weren't evacuated because they just magically declared it safe. A contaminated area about 8 times larger remains inhabited. A contaminated area. Little kernels of truth. A bit subject to continuous radiation monitoring. Oh, yeah, well, you've got to study the guinea pigs. Where to? Can't study them somewhere else. Like the industry is lunatic. But they're cowards is the unique facet of that. That's the one interesting thing. They're lunatics, but they're incredible cowards to people that say this and do this to people. The pro-nuclear community, for the most part, is the strangest weirdos you'll ever come across. These are weirdos. That's the only way you can describe them. And morons, but in the nuclear industry, they're compartmentalized. They got one task. They got incredible amount of degrees. So the average person, right, feels that they must be right because they're incredibly educated. That don't mean they've got any kind of moral compass or not completely criminal and corrupt. Well, you can't work in the nuclear industry unless you're a scumbag, period. And the bigger the scumbag, the more higher positions. We're almost through this, but this last story is really important, so let's keep on track. This was unclear, UN. These are the communities, population. This row here is just the cesium-137, because apparently nothing else exists when it comes to the nuclear whack jobs. So keep your eye on this number and that number, which is the population. The first number is population. The first over there is the communities. And then it's 185 counts per minute, not 39,561, for instance. 185 would be an evacuation zone at a nuclear plant pre-Fukushima. So when you look at all these different communities, this is just a fraction. All of them abandoned. Like Koriyama City, 340,000 people, 160,000 counts per minute of just gamma. And just one type of gamma. It's absurd to suggest that you don't multiply these numbers by 400 or 500 to get the other isotopes. So you see all these communities, and the populations of the second row, and the third row of my head up there is the fallout. All these communities. But the food was actually banned in half the country. All the large prefectures, 14 prefectures, by 55 countries for over a decade. They replaced the people that put the ban into place and removed it. The radiation doesn't go away. There's no decay. Don't turn to fairy dust. No fairy dust. The dominant source of radiation exposure for people stem from gamma rays emitted. No. Curium is the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods. Period. Not up for debate. And it needs lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium. I'm not saying that gamma is not a friggin' nightmare, because it is. Emitted by contaminated soil, pavement, roads, and buildings. It becomes embedded in that material. The objective of the decontamination operation, which I showed you pictures of, is the last thing you can call a decontamination operation. Just let me set this up properly. Take me a second, because we're getting there. Oh yeah, we're not too far now. Radio cesium. When you put an A in cesium, that's British. So this is heavily British, which means it's pure propaganda every time. Which is the most. So radio cesium, which is British is the only people who pronounce it that way. The British nuclear industry, which is the most important. No, it's not. Plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium are just as important or more important. And not that cesium is harmless or innocuous. It's brutal. They're all important. One's a muscle sinker, another one's a bone seekers. Long-lived radioactive elements emitted by the accident in terms of radioactive dose adheres to soil, particularly particles, very strongly. So it binds with soil. Consequently, the decontamination of the agricultural land primarily involved removing the top 5 centimeters of soil. That is probably the scariest thing conceivable. 2 inches of soil. 2.5 centimeters is an inch. So take a shovel tomorrow or next day and try to scrape up the top 2 inches of soil. And you're going to say to me, well, you can't do that. You got to go a lot deeper. You can't just scrape up. It's not like icing on a cake where you can, even then you still can't scrape symmetrically, right? It just doesn't work that way. Consequently, decontamination of agricultural land primarily involved removal. So, but, we got the testimony from the farmers. They're just flipping the soil over. They're not even removing it. So they're digging down a few inches and then just flipping it. That's what the majority of it is. You can't decontaminate all those farms. Radioactive. That's a frightening statement, folks. In urban areas, decontamination efforts entailed the removal of topsoils from sports fields where the kids are going to be playing sports. So these are sadistic people who suggest that these would have any kind of benefits or mitigation in any whatsoever, as well as sandblasting or pressure washing hard surfaces. I'm telling you right now, this is insanity to frame the narrative like that. This is insanity. But it's so interesting to have them actually saying it out loud. Therefore, reducing doses by 60% in farmland and residential areas. Again, this is madness to say stuff like that. It doesn't work that way. And it'll never work at 60%. That's ludicrous to suggest. The far cry from Chernobyl where extensive decontamination initiatives were ultimately abandoned. The 60 million one-ton bags, the 30 million one-ton bags they admit to, the 60 million other people claim, it's just 3% of the land where the homeless and the destitute and victims of society, the people who don't know nothing about radiation, filled up one-ton bags. To give the illusion, decontamination of land in Fukushima cost tens of billions. The numbers are over 48 billion that I know of. Some puts it at 80 billion. The processes, unfortunately, also cause substantial radiation exposure for the workers involved. This stuff is gold, by the way. They also cause substantial exposure for the workers, generating huge amounts of radioactive soil waste. But the question of whether decontaminate land is complex and only partially related to scientific evidence. On the one hand, decontamination provides reassurance radiation is being cleaned up, but you can't clean up radiation. It doesn't work that way. And the dose is being reduced, but it can also give the impression low-level radiation is more dangerous than it actually is. So, yeah, you knew at some point scumbag was going to show up, and the nuclear industry don't like to disappoint us. We're almost through. We still got a little ways to go. We're going to finish it up because it's such an important story. I'm not going to... Yeah, it's late. It's after midnight my time, but I'm not in a big rush to miss... We only got 10, 12 more to get through. But this stuff is really important, what we just read that time, all of that stuff, and those pictures I showed you. Only 30% of the people have returned to their homes. Well, that's not true. It's in the 20s maybe, but it's not 30. Dose rates were not dangerously high in many areas of Fukushima that were subject to decontamination. In fact, the doses were low, except for everywhere in the country. 18 million becquerels a square meter in Tokyo, but the doses were low at within a few miles of the nuclear meltdown, were they? These levels fall within the natural range peoples are exposed to from radioactivity in rock, soil, buildings, and cosmic radiation. Bananas and everything. But they don't, do they? Hot radioactive particles in Seattle were 50% of the levels seen in Tokyo. The numbers in Tokyo were catastrophic. In Tokyo, it was another rainfall caused 29 million extra atoms per square meter in the soil. 29 million atoms. Decontamination also allowed agricultural land to return productive use more quickly. Like these are crazy people. And let me explain that right quick because we only got a few more minutes to go. Then we'll get through the rest. We'll be through the rest of it. Like spraying roofs, sidewalks, and roads is not decontamination. It's not. It's got nothing to do with picking up 1-ton bags is not decontamination. Putting them in the bags and then continue to grow the food there is madness too. Even if you move the bags, growing the food, but picking up these bags don't quantify as cleaning up. But that's what is now considered acceptable. Putting 3,000 3,000 Geiger counters in a town full of 1-ton bags of radiation with 100,000 atoms per kilogram, and the Geiger counters are barely registering anything. And in the little boxes where they kept people so they couldn't leave. And the children walking in a nuclear wasteland. It's too much for me sometimes. Decontamination allows agricultural land to return to productivity. It doesn't. You can't decontaminate land, trees, or anything else. It doesn't work that way. However, the process of removing topsoil has a side effect of damaging soil fertility. No, you kill all the biota in the soil. Right? You kill all the bacteria and the fungus in the soil that gives the soil the ability to retain water and life and creates the atmosphere for roots. You destroy that with radiation. You shine the shit out of it with radiation until it's gone. The persistence of radiocesium, with an A, in the ecosystem, particularly in forests, has been known for many decades. Globally, radiocesium levels in wild foodstuff like mushrooms, edible plants, game animals, and freshwater fish tend to be higher than those found in the agricultural system. It's not true. Why would there be any difference? And then, of course, millions of people worldwide receive higher annual radiation doses than the residents at the Fukushima zone without ever worrying about it. So shut the fuck up. Yours truly, Jim Smith, Professor of Environmental Science, University of Portsmouth, UK. Happy fucking birthday. What a fucking way to have a birthday and read something like that and make you spoil your fucking birthday, you pricks. Being evil is easy. Being a good person is hard. And so you people are good people. And bless your heart because I know how hard it is. I'm not naive and I'm not gullible. I'm just a normal person like everybody else, and I got a conscience and I don't know how to keep my fucking mouth shut because I'd rather do something than nothing. And I think I'm doing a bit better than nothing. I think it's a bit better than something too sometimes. James got a good song by the looks of it. Enrich it higher. I'm liking it. Is Japan lying by claiming Fukushima Reactor 3 containment exists despite the videos and pictures I showed you tonight that proves it's gone? Somebody said no. I can't make everybody happy. Why would you even try? Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody Sunday, hopefully. Take care.
They call it low, but it's higher. They call it steady, but it burns much longer. They call it LEU plus, the fuel of the day. Extended burn cycles, fewer outages they say. High burner, running longer inside. But the waste runs hotter, burning longer every time. Approval with no clear plan, license in another hand. Separate don't solve the problem. goes, enrich it higher, higher. But we know it's high. Enrich it higher, higher. Future's burning, can't deny. We wish higher, 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 higher. Call it low, but we know it's higher, 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 higher. Future's burning, can't deny. They say cuss the need to buy. No more Russian supply to rely. But every centrifuge feeds the line. Fuel for halo in time. 10% today, 20 tomorrow. Borrow time and borrow sorrow. Efficiency wrapped in disguise. But the cost is written in the sky. They call it energy secure, but the story won't endure. The sign shows the flaw, yet approval signs it all. Call it low, but we know it's high. Enrich it higher. Future's burning, can't deny. LEU plus extended burn. The rise was stronger, but the waves runs high. Cool and long.